You won't believe what happened in my own neighborhood. My daughter, paralyzed and in her wheelchair, was literally dragged out of our driveway by our HOA president. I screamed. My husband ran out, and the moment he showed his ID, she fainted. And no, this isn't a prank. This is real life, right here in our suburban nightmare. If you think HOA rules are harmless, think again. This story is going to make you question everything you thought about neighbors, authority, and the absolute chaos that can hide behind a perfectly manicured lawn. The morning was quiet, deceptively so. Birds chirped, sprinklers hummed, and the sun dappled through the oak trees lining our street. I remember gripping the handles of my daughter's wheelchair, trying to enjoy the calm before the chaos. I told her we'd take a little ride around the cul-de-sac. She smiled, her usual bright grin, unaware that little ride would become a battle royale with suburban absurdity. Then I saw her, Mrs. Caldwell, our HOA president, armed with a clipboard like a medieval general surveying her battlefield. She was standing right at the edge of our driveway, glaring like she'd spotted a crime scene. I tried to wave politely. "Good morning, Mrs. Caldwell." No response. Just a slow, deliberate step forward, her heels clicking ominously against the pavement. "You cannot park your daughter's wheelchair here," she snapped, voice sharp enough to cut through my morning calm. I blinked. "Excuse me?" She pointed at the wheelchair. "It's an eyesore. It's in violation of HOA regulations. You have 5 minutes to move it, or I will." I froze. The absurdity hit me first, then anger. "Wait, are you seriously telling me you're going to physically remove my daughter from her wheelchair?" Her eyes narrowed. "I follow the rules. Rules are rules." I remember the way my daughter's small hands tightened around mine, a quiet plea I couldn't ignore. My heart raced. I knew this wouldn't end with polite discussion. Before I could intervene, Mrs. Caldwell moved faster than I expected. She grabbed the wheelchair handles and started tugging. My voice rose in panic, calling for my husband. People were stepping outside, drawn to the commotion, faces mixed with confusion and disbelief. "Stop! Get off my daughter!" I shouted. But she ignored me, muscles straining, teeth gritted in righteous fury. And then, just as quickly as it began, the sound of screeching tires and a shout from my husband cut through the morning like a lightning bolt. Mrs. Caldwell froze, her jaw dropping, and that's when it happened. The roar of the car startled everyone, including Mrs. Caldwell. My husband skidded to a stop in the driveway, his face pale but furious, and before I could even explain, he was out of the car, keys still in hand. "Get your hands off her," he bellowed, voice low but thunderous. People on the street stopped mid-step, watching the suburban showdown unfold like an unexpected action scene. Mrs. Caldwell turned toward him, her expression a mix of horror and indignation, as if the audacity of a man daring to oppose her violated the laws of nature. This is... "I don't care about your HOA rules," he cut her off, stepping between her and my daughter. "You are not touching her." She flinched as he moved closer, as though proximity alone would burn her. Her clipboard shook in her hands, scribbling angry, illegible notes that fluttered to the ground. I have the authority," she stammered, her voice cracking. "Authority? Over a child in a wheelchair?" My blood boiled. I knelt beside my daughter, brushing her hair back from her face. "Sweetie, it's okay. Daddy's here." Her eyes were wide, shimmering with tears, her tiny hands clutching mine so tightly I thought she might leave marks. The street had gone silent. A few neighbors peeked from behind curtains. One brave soul even appeared on the sidewalk, phone out. I didn't blame them. Most people avoid HOA battles like they're natural disasters. But this was different. Mrs. Caldwell straightened, attempting to rally her dignity. "You can't just, And that's when my husband reached into his jacket, pulling out his wallet. He held up his ID. Not just any ID, but the HOA's board member registry certificate, a little-known document proving he was technically on the same team as her. Her face went pale. Really pale. I've seen people faint in movies, and now I understood why they made it look dramatic. It was exactly like that. Her knees buckled, clipboard clattering to the ground again, and she collapsed into the neighbor's hydrangea bush with a squeak somewhere between a gasp and a yelp. For a moment, everything froze. The street, the birds, the sunlight. It all held its breath. My daughter laughed nervously, a tiny squeak of relief, and I wrapped my arms around her. And then Mrs. Caldwell's muffled cries began to shift. She wasn't just embarrassed, she was plotting. I could see it in the way she wriggled out of the bush, brushing leaves from her blazer, eyes narrowing like a storm about to hit. I knew in that exact moment this wasn't over, far from it. By mid-afternoon, the neighborhood had turned into a war zone disguised as a quiet cul-de-sac. Word travels fast when someone's fighting an HOA Karen, and now half the block was watching from behind hedges, binoculars, and half-drawn blinds. I could hear whispers, some sympathetic, some gossipy. But none of it mattered. My focus was on my daughter, whose cheeks were still pink from shock and adrenaline. Mrs. Caldwell had retreated to the edge of her manicured lawn, brushing off her crushed hydrangea skirt with theatrical precision. But her eyes... those eyes were dangerous. Like a cat sizing up a new toy. She muttered something under her breath, something about illegal parking and consequences, but I couldn't make out all the words. "Mom, why does she hate me?" my daughter asked quietly, voice trembling. I forced a smile, kneeling to meet her gaze. "She doesn't really hate you, sweetie. She just doesn't know how to be a human sometimes." Before I could finish, Mrs. Caldwell's phone rang. She answered with exaggerated urgency, whispering sharp words that carried too clearly to the street. "Yes, I want the security cameras reviewed. Immediately. Do you see them? She's flaunting it." She glared at us, as if speaking on the phone gave her some mystical power. My husband stepped closer, his jaw tight. "You're literally threatening my child with a wheelchair," he said. His tone was calm, but every word cut like a scalpel. She lifted a finger, trembling with righteous fury. I can have fines issued, citations, legal action." I laughed, bitter and incredulous. "You mean you can write more pieces of paper while you ignore common decency?" Her face twitched, and then it happened. She lunged, figuratively. She started marching toward us, arms flailing like she was conducting an invisible orchestra of justice, muttering, "Rules, rules, rules." I could see she was teetering on hysteria. I grabbed my daughter's wheelchair and positioned myself protectively, heart hammering. "Okay, that's it. You want to escalate? Fine. But you do not touch my daughter again." A sharp knock echoed from across the street. A neighbor, someone we barely knew, stood at the end of the driveway holding his phone, recording everything. "Is she okay?" he asked, voice careful but curious. Mrs. Caldwell froze mid-step, and then, unbelievably, she started shouting, "Trespassing! Illegal filming! This is harassment!" Her voice cracked like a violin string under tension. And just like that, the drama had exploded from a single wheelchair into a full-blown neighborhood spectacle. My daughter whimpered, sensing the storm around her. I felt my stomach drop. Whatever came next, there was no turning back. By late afternoon, the entire street felt like a stage set for chaos. Neighbors had come out of hiding, some leaning on fences, others cautiously peeking from cars. Phones were out, capturing every flailing hand and shouted word like we'd all unknowingly become extras in a suburban soap opera. Mrs. Caldwell was in full performance mode now. She waved her arms, her clipboard raised like a sword, and bellowed, "This is harassment! My property rights! My HOA authority!" Her voice cracked, hitting high theatrical notes that made me wince. I gritted my teeth and tightened my grip on my daughter's wheelchair. "You need to leave, right now," I said, voice steady but firm. "You are done here." She spun toward me, eyes wild. How dare you? Don't you know who I am?" "Yeah, you're the woman who just tried to physically remove my child from her wheelchair," my husband interjected, finally stepping into the center of the chaos like a calm storm. "And you fainted when I showed my ID. Remember that?" Her jaw dropped again, and for a split second I swear the whole world paused. Then, fueled by outrage and sheer embarrassment, she charged, not at us, but at the street signs, waving her arms like she was trying to summon some invisible justice army. I grabbed my daughter close, whispering, "I know it's scary, sweetie. I'm right here." The tears glistened in her eyes, but there was also awe, almost like watching a real-life superhero scene. Suddenly Mrs. Caldwell's phone rang again. She barked into it. "Yes! They are videotaping me! I need a citation! A violation!" She stomped so hard that a neighbor's recycling bin toppled over, and the clatter echoed through the cul-de-sac like gunfire. My husband turned to me, voice low, tinged with disbelief and a dry sort of humor. "Do we call the cops or the circus first?" I laughed nervously, holding my daughter tighter. "I think the circus is already here." The tension cracked into a chaotic mix of absurdity and danger. Neighbors whispered, some trying to intervene, some staying safely behind fences. And then, just as I thought it might finally simmer down, Mrs. Caldwell took a deep breath and pointed directly at us, her face red, her hands trembling, and yelled something I couldn't even understand. A sudden sharp sound, like the click of a lock or the snap of a lever, echoed behind her. I turned and my stomach dropped. Something else was happening. It was clear now. Whatever came next, this wasn't going to end with words or papers. This was about to get even worse. Everything seemed to slow down as Mrs. Caldwell's finger jabbed toward us. I could feel my daughter trembling beside me, small hands clutching mine like a lifeline. I glanced at my husband, steady, calm, the eye of the storm, and knew we had to act fast. Before I could say a word, a loud, authoritative voice cut through the chaos. "Ma'am, step away from the child." It was the neighborhood security officer, finally responding to the calls from neighbors who had had enough of the spectacle. Mrs. Caldwell froze, her eyes darting between us and the approaching officer, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Identify yourself!" the officer demanded. Mrs. Caldwell, flustered, waved her arms wildly, clutching the clipboard to her chest. My husband stepped forward and, calmly, again presented his ID. The effect was instantaneous. Mrs. Caldwell's knees buckled, again, but this time with finality. She sank into the grass, eyes wide, silent, realizing she had overstepped every boundary imaginable. The clipboard slipped from her hands, landing with a hollow thud that seemed to echo across the cul-de-sac. I hugged my daughter, relief washing over me like a wave. "It's okay, sweetie. It's over," I whispered, my voice trembling. Her small arms wrapped around my neck, and for the first time since this morning, she smiled genuinely, the tension melting from her little frame. Neighbors cautiously came forward, murmuring their support, shaking their heads at Mrs. Caldwell's collapse. Some offered water, others discreetly recorded the scene, knowing this was a story that would live in neighborhood lore forever. Mrs. Caldwell remained on the ground, muttering under her breath about rules and citations. But no one listened. My husband placed a hand on my shoulder, and we watched as the officer guided her toward a neighbor's porch, insisting she wait there until someone from the HOA board could intervene. Later, as we wheeled my daughter back inside, the sun dipping low behind the trees, I realized how surreal the day had been. A morning ride had turned into a full-blown suburban nightmare, complete with fainting, threats, and public humiliation. But in the end, what mattered most was my daughter, safe and smiling, her trust intact, and the lesson seared into everyone's memory. Authority doesn't give you the right to harm others, not even in a perfectly manicured neighborhood. I closed the door behind us, hearing Mrs. Caldwell's muffled complaints fade into the distance, and as I held my daughter in my arms, I couldn't help but let out a small, dry laugh. Some days, the HOA drama writes itself, and this one would be remembered forever. If you can't believe what just happened here, you're not alone. HOA drama can get wild. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more unbelievable true stories, and drop a comment below. What would you do if this happened to your family? We read every single one, and your story might just inspire the next video.